NXT and AEW Dynamite went head-to-head for 1 hour yesterday on October 8th, 2024, and today the numbers are in, and trust me when I tell you guys, this is absolutely insane, and I need to talk about it. We're going to talk about how NXT absolutely destroyed AEW, and I'm going to explain why you guys shouldn't panic just yet, but it is something to definitely be concerned about, and it's all coming up right here on The Ango Show. Alright guys, so NXT was live from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern on the CW. Now, AEW, typically it's on Wednesday nights, but Dynamite actually aired on Tuesday, and they branded the episode as a special Title Tuesday, and the show went live from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern, and now the ratings are in. I want to take a look at this, guys. Dave Meltzer came out with a tweet. NXT did 874,000 viewers. AEW did a shockingly low 329,000 viewers. Dave also goes on to say it is very clear at this point AEW's audience, unlike 2 years ago, is choosing WWE, and they have less of an exclusive audience than before. And this is true. Now, the reason why I say we shouldn't be alarmed, well, there's a couple reasons, but the big one is AEW is typically on Wednesday nights. But I want to explain this to you guys because I think this is the biggest thing. I do not talk about ratings often, and the reason why I do not talk about ratings often is because the number that Dave Meltzer just showed you is not the number that I think legitimately watched both shows. In fact, I would go as far as saying AEW and NXT clearly had more viewers. The technology that does all of this calculations, the Nielsen boxes, it's all outdated, and I think with streaming and so many other different ways to watch shows, I don't think these ratings are truly accurate. But I think this doesn't need to necessarily be accurate when you can get a clear indication of what it means. Now, with that being said, I do agree that Dave is right. For once, I actually agree with Dave Meltzer. I do think, unlike 2 years ago, AEW's audience is basically less exclusive than ever before. And that is where I am concerned. I think it is very obvious that AEW has found themselves in a situation where a lot of people who were truly hardcore and passionate about their product, I do think they lost a percentage of that audience. And it doesn't mean that they're gone forever, but it is super evidently clear that AEW has lost a part of its loyal audience. Now, are they watching WWE? Are they choosing WWE over AEW? I don't have any data to suggest that, but what I am starting to realize in the world of professional wrestling, when WWE is incredibly hot and WWE is on fire, it does do some damage to AEW. I also think it's really important for people to understand that if you're losing your loyal audience, it is a lot harder to get them back. And I think this is evident because WWE throughout the years has lost a very big percentage of their loyal audience. So what is happening to AEW, I think we have already experienced with WWE in the past. Now, granted, the world of entertainment has shifted tremendously, and I'm not making this video to bag on WWE or to bag on AEW, but quite frankly, this needs to be discussed because it is a little bit worrisome. I think AEW needs to do something to get back on track, and I'm not talking about just ratings, but I'm talking about this perception war that exists, because the perception war is really the thing that they're losing at more than anything. AEW came into the wrestling industry at a time where WWE was not cool. AEW made wrestling cool again. And then when Vince McMahon was gone from the WWE and WWE brings in Triple H and they're making all these changes, WWE starts to get that cool factor again. AEW begins to lose that cool factor, and now the perception war is really damaging AEW because no matter what, it is very clear that WWE is the cooler brand to follow. And I'm just saying this because perception is reality. And look at WWE. Even when their shows aren't that great, they are still selling out tickets. When WWE shows aren't that great, they are still being talked about everywhere. When AEW shows are really bad, people are talking about it. When AEW shows are really good, to be honest with you, people aren't talking about it as much as they are when they're talking about it negatively. And that is what happens when you're losing a perception war. And I think right now WWE has done a really good job of appearing as a cool brand. Let's not talk about booking. Let's not talk about business decisions. But when you see Metro Boomin and Lil Baby and Sexy Red and Meg Thee Stallion and all these different celebrities or athletes or Hollywood actors get involved with WWE and they're in attendance for WWE, there is a coolness factor that is associated with this. And I think with AEW, you're missing a lot of that. Perception is reality. AEW is very clearly losing the perception war. And listen, it is easy to rebound, but you have to do it consistently. And one of the biggest issues that AEW has had in the last 2 years is consistency. I've actually been on record saying that 2024 has been a big improvement over 2023. But guess what? In the last month or so, it feels like AEW is starting to get back into old habits, not letting storylines breathe, things happening randomly at times. And I hate to say this. I really, really hate to say this. But I'm telling you guys right now, if you think I'm lying, then why aren't people going to the shows? Why aren't people buying tickets? Okay? WWE has figured out the perfect system for PR. They figured out the perfect system for marketing. They figured out the perfect system for everything that is necessary to have a great brand awareness and to have great brand reputation. WWE is seemingly looking cooler and cooler every single week. And AEW is so rich. Tony Khan's got so much money, and for some reason, they're lacking in that department. And I do think throughout time, because of the inconsistency with their TV show, fans have decided to stray away from the product. And I think, it doesn't help when you... Listen, this is not a popular opinion, but this is the reality. This is the reality that nobody wants to admit. Cody Rhodes, an integral part of AEW, gone from the company. Okay, that was a big blow, and it was very clear after Cody left that creative and certain things happening in the company shifted, but it wasn't like the company was struggling that bad because of it. But I think AEW basically kicking CM Punk out, making CM Punk look like the villain, and making him look so bad in the process actually made AEW look worse, because you basically shit on all of the CM Punk fans who may have not even heard of AEW if it wasn't for CM Punk coming in. But here's the thing. You got rid of CM Punk, and people were like, hey, maybe we'll just give AEW a chance. Even without CM Punk, maybe we'll give them a chance. And then throughout time, people are like, hey, this show's not really that good, or it's inconsistent, or it's really not that great. This week it was great. This week it's not. The thing is, I think throughout time, it didn't happen overnight. And I said this years ago. It would never happen overnight, but it will happen gradually. And that is exactly what is happening here. NXT did not go head-to-head with AEW for 2 hours. So let's be clear. Maybe the numbers would have looked a little bit differently. But this is not about the numbers, guys. This is about the reality that we are currently living in. AEW is no longer the cool brand. AEW is no longer the fun wrestling show. AEW is no longer the alternative. To a lot of people's eyes, AEW is just another wrestling company, and quite frankly, a lot of that AEW tribalism probably pushed people away, and I can understand why it pushed people away. I think it even pushed a lot of content creators away. I think it pushed a lot of people away. I think there's a reason why so many people decided, look, like, this is not the brand that we like. This is not the brand that we fell in love with, right? Things have clearly shifted, and I'm sorry to say this, but this is the reality. Tony Khan needs to make some changes, because they had a very hardcore, loyal audience, okay? And when Dynamite would switch nights because, they had to, because the MLB playoffs or whatever it may be, NHL, whatever it was, whenever AEW would move nights, there would be a lot of fans who were still excited to watch the product. I forget that AEW was even on last night up until literally an hour before the show, because Tony Khan and AEW have not marketed that the show was really going to be on a different night. I think right now AEW has to make some change. It starts with their TV product. It's not about the cheap pops. It's not about the major announcements. It's not about the TV deal. It's not about any of those things. The reality is AEW has to go back to what made them cool. And the truth is, it could already be too late. Well, not necessarily. Let me explain why. In pro wrestling, things are like waves, right? And there's a certain time period where every so often we see this happen, where wrestlers come in, okay? Wrestlers come in, they do some great storylines or whatever, and then eventually business gets hot, and then eventually they run out of ideas, they're struggling, and then it cools down a little bit, right? And every so often this happens, bro. This literally happens every so often. We literally get to a point where wrestling does that. Perfect example, WrestleMania 40. Going into WrestleMania 40, there was a ton of excitement because of The Rock and Roman Reigns. You take The Rock off television, what do you notice? Yes, WWE is still incredibly hot, but it didn't have that same fire that it had prior going to WrestleMania 40. It was very obvious that there was a dramatic shift once The Rock and Roman Reigns were pulled off of TV. So this happens in professional wrestling. And that's why I think for AEW, you can't be pressing the panic button, but you can't go back to the way you did things before, which was resort to big announcements or new signings or debuts. It's very clear, guys. We, as content creators, me specifically, I judge a TV show. And I'm telling you guys, you don't have to agree with me. You could like the wrestling matches, you could like the rosters, you could like this, but these shows aren't properly written. And I don't care who sits there and disagrees with me on this. They're not properly written. It is not consistently good television. It's just simply not. And you guys can make excuses for Tony Khan. It doesn't impact me. You guys can make excuses for Tony Khan if you so choose. But I've been saying this for years. All those excuses that you're doing for Tony Khan simply just hurt Tony Khan's business, because ultimately what is happening is that AEW's trajectory, instead of going upwards, it's going downwards. And by the way, I've been told, I read my comments, but I was told Mercedes is going to come in and change the game. Adam Copeland would change the game. All these names would change the game. That's not how it works. That is not how it works. Now, I think there is something that needs to be addressed here. This is probably the biggest thing, too. Wrestling fans love tradition, okay? Let's just call it what it is. Wrestling fans love tradition. If you're expecting to watch Friday Night SmackDown every night, that's your tradition. You're going to watch Friday Night SmackDown, right? Same thing applies to AEW Dynamite. AEW, with their TV deal, they are going on different nights, and I think when you already have all these negative things stacked against you from a TV product, when you're switching nights, it automatically makes things worse. I do believe Tony Khan could get out of this situation. I think Tony Khan could get AEW on fire again, but it's very simple. Whatever they're doing right now is not working. We could sit here and debate all day. There's not really a debate that's necessary for this. I'm sorry. The truth is, there is not a debate for this. The reality is that AEW is in a pickle because they know what is cool. They've done it before. That's what made them the alternative. Go back to 2019 and 2020. Go back to those years. Go back to 2021 and look at what AEW was doing. It felt cool. There's a reason why WWE stars left WWE and went to AEW. Holy shit, I could go work for another company, be on TV, get paid a lot of money, and by the way, they're the cool brand. Times have changed, my friends. Times have changed. Crazy.